So much of our suffering comes from this deep, almost unconscious belief that if we can just control enough variables, we can secure our happiness and avoid our pain. We grip tightly to our plans, our expectations, and even our identities, as though they were lifelines keeping us safe. But the truth is, life has never agreed to follow the script we write in our minds. It flows according to its own intelligence, and the more we try to force it to bend to our will, the more tension and anxiety we create within ourselves. This is why detachment is not about giving up or becoming indifferent. It's about releasing the illusion that we can predict and command every outcome. When we step back from this constant need to control, something remarkable happens. The tightness in the chest begins to loosen. The mind stops racing toward 1,000 possible futures, and we start to see that the present moment is not an obstacle to get through, but a living, breathing space in which life unfolds. Every time we insist that things must go a certain way, we lock ourselves into a narrow path, and when life inevitably takes a different turn, we feel betrayed or fearful. But when we release that grip, we open to the infinite possibilities that were hidden behind our insistence on one fixed result. It takes courage to live like this, because the mind equates control with safety. But safety is not found in control. It's found in adaptability. Imagine being a river. You do not need to dictate where the rocks or bends in your path will be. You simply flow, and in that flow you find a freedom far greater than any rigid plan could offer. In this way, detachment becomes the gateway to peace. We are not giving up our dreams, but we are allowing them to breathe, to evolve, to transform into forms that may be even better than what we first imagined. So often, what we label as failure or disappointment is simply life redirecting us towards something more aligned. But if we are gripping too tightly to the old, we cannot receive the new. Detachment creates space. It allows us to meet each moment without the weight of yesterday's plans or tomorrow's fears. It turns life from a battle to be won into an adventure to be experienced. And in that shift, anxiety loses its power. When we truly understand this, we stop fighting the current. We begin to see that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the natural state of all creation. And within that uncertainty lies magic, spontaneity, and the possibility for joy beyond what our limited minds can conceive. To live carefree and fearless is to dance with life as it is, without demanding that it be something else. It is to trust that even when the path is unclear, each step is carrying us exactly where we are meant to be. Fear is not something that arrives in the present moment. It is almost always a projection of the mind, a story we tell ourselves about what might happen, what could go wrong, what we might lose. If you pause and truly observe, you will see that fear feeds on imagined futures more than it does on reality itself. In this way, fear is less about the actual circumstances of life and more about our relationship with our own thoughts. And this is where awareness becomes our greatest ally. Awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. When you are caught in fear, it feels like you are trapped in a maze, but the maze exists only in your mind. The moment you bring awareness to it, the moment you watch the fear instead of being pulled into it, you begin to see its true nature. You see the thoughts rise. You notice the tightening in your body. You observe the mind racing to predict every possible outcome. And in that observation, something powerful happens. You create space between yourself and the fear. You are no longer completely identified with it. This space is where freedom begins. Fear loses its grip when we realize it is not the totality of who we are. It may visit us, but it does not define us. Through awareness, we can watch fear come and go like passing weather. Some days it might be a heavy storm, other days a faint cloud in the distance, but we know that behind it, the sky is always clear. Awareness allows us to stay connected to that sky. When fear arises, the untrained mind reacts immediately, contracting and defending itself, building walls to feel secure. But those walls only make us smaller. Awareness offers a different choice. Instead of reacting, we can pause. We can breathe. We can notice. We can ask ourselves, is this fear telling me the truth about this moment? Or is it a story my mind is creating? Most of the time, it's the story. And when you see the story for what it is, its power fades. This doesn't mean we suppress fear or pretend it isn't there. Denial is not the same as freedom. True freedom comes from facing fear fully, but with the gentle, steady gaze of awareness. You don't fight it, you don't run from it. You simply acknowledge it, understand it, and choose not to let it dictate your life. In doing so, you discover that fear is not a solid wall, it is a shadow, and shadows disappear in light. With every moment of awareness, you reclaim your energy from fear and redirect it toward living. You begin to move through life not as someone bracing for danger, but as someone open to possibility. You see more clearly, you feel more deeply, and you live more fully. And in that clarity, fear no longer stands in your way. It simply becomes another passing wave in the vast ocean of your being. So much of our fear and anxiety comes from measuring ourselves against the shifting opinions and expectations of the world. From a young age, we are taught to look outward for validation, to be approved of, to be admired, to fit into standards set by others. And without realizing it, we begin to build our identity from borrowed pieces, the praise we receive, the labels we are given, the roles we are expected to play. This kind of identity feels fragile because it is built on something we cannot control, other people's perceptions. The moment someone disapproves or misunderstands us, our sense of self begins to shake. When you align with your inner self instead of the outer noise, you step into a different kind of power. It is not loud or forceful, but steady and unshakable. It does not depend on trends or popularity. It comes from knowing who you are beyond your roles, beyond your achievements, beyond even your name. This self is not something you have to create. It is something you uncover by turning inward and listening deeply. The outer world will always have an opinion. One day you may be celebrated, and the next you may be criticized. If your worth rises and falls with those fluctuations, you will always feel as though you are chasing approval that slips through your fingers. But when your sense of self comes from within, you are no longer at the mercy of these waves. You can appreciate praise without needing it, and you can hear criticism without being crushed by it. This doesn't mean you shut yourself off from the world or stop caring about others. It means you stop making their approval the foundation of your identity. Instead, you live from a place of authenticity, guided by your own values and truth. And in doing so, you discover a deep freedom, the freedom to live in alignment with what feels right for you, even if it does not please everyone. To find this alignment, you must be willing to spend time in stillness, to listen to the quiet voice beneath the noise of your mind. This is where your intuition lives, where clarity comes without force, where you remember that your worth is not something that can be given or taken away. It is constant, unchanging, and untouched by the shifting tides of public opinion. When you live from this inner alignment, fear begins to fade. You no longer worry about being misunderstood or rejected because those things no longer define you. You move through the world with a quiet confidence, knowing that you are anchored in something far deeper than external validation. And from that place, every action, every word, every choice becomes an authentic expression of who you truly are. The mind loves to wander into the past and leap into the future. It replays old conversations, reopens wounds, and rehearses scenarios that may never happen. This constant movement creates a subtle but persistent tension within us, because neither the past nor the future truly exists, they live only in thought. The past is a memory shaped by interpretation, and the future is an image built on imagination. Yet we spend so much of our lives dwelling in these mental spaces that we often miss the one place where life is actually happening, the present moment. When we live anchored in the now, fear begins to dissolve. Fear needs time to survive. It borrows the past to remind us of pain, and it projects into the future to warn us of danger. But here, in this moment, if you take a breath and look around, most often you will find that you are safe. The mind might tell you there is a storm on the horizon, but the body is sitting in stillness. The heart is beating, the lungs are breathing, and life is unfolding without demand. Living in the present is not about denying your history or refusing to plan for what's ahead. It's about knowing that those things do not define your experience right now. The present moment has a richness and depth that is unavailable when we are consumed by yesterday or tomorrow. In this space we are more aware, more responsive, and more alive. We notice the warmth of sunlight on our skin, the sound of wind moving through the trees, the tone in someone's voice when they speak to us. Life becomes less of a rush and more of an unfolding. This is where peace resides, not in fixing the past, not in securing the future, but in fully inhabiting the moment you are in. When you are here, really here, even challenges feel different. You deal with what is in front of you, not the 10 different versions of it your mind has imagined. You stop carrying the weight of every possible outcome and simply take the next step that is required now. It can be startling to realize how much life we miss when our attention is somewhere else. A conversation with a loved one becomes more intimate when you're not thinking about your next task. A walk becomes more beautiful when you're not replaying an argument in your head. Joy becomes easier to feel when you are not measuring it against an imagined standard of how things should be. The more we train ourselves to return to the present, the more natural it becomes. Breath is a great anchor. Each inhale and exhale is an invitation back to now. And as we spend more time in this space, fear loses its foundation. We begin to see that right here, right now, we have everything we need, and that is where true freedom begins.